Hello, everybody. It's Wednesday. It's time for Troop Talk Live. Hi, Angelique. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Aaron?
I'm doing very well. It's a little chilly Wednesday down here in Texas. We hope you all are staying warm and safe and comfortable wherever you are. Today's topic is, I think, a good one. This is Angelique's idea, and I think this is really kind of shows she's got her fingers on the pulse of the issues that you guys are talking about. We're talking today about boards of review. It's a phrase that even myself, many years of experience in the scouting program, I kind of only vaguely know what they're about. I certainly don't know the details. So I'm going to learn a lot today, along with all of you watching. Shout out to Rusty. How you doing, man? Feel free to chime in the comments with any questions you might have. To get us started, Angelique, though, let's talk sort of big, broad picture. When we say Scouts BSA Board of Review, what are we talking about?
All right. So a scout, when they are working on rank, they go through their Scoutmaster conference, which is a meeting with the Scoutmaster where they go over, make sure they have all the requirements done, talk about life with the Scoutmaster, talk about their experience. And then they sit at a board of review. And the board of review is with the troop members of the troop committee. And that is when the scout actually makes the next rank. So they are attending their board of review, getting the rank approved and signed off on with the date, and that date becomes the date that they rank up.
Okay, yeah, and I think that sort of the official purpose of the board of review is to, correct me if I'm wrong here, Angelique, determine the quality of the scouts' experience and if rank requirements have been fulfilled.
Yes.
So during today's show, we're going to talk kind of about the do's and don'ts, maybe how to do that. So before we go forward, though, real quick, I would love it if real quick you mentioned Scoutmaster Conference. Can you just explain that real quick? What is the Scoutmaster Conference?
Sure. So a Scoutmaster Conference should be the first thing that happens. And a Scoutmaster Conference happens, and it's at the end of their rank requirements in their book. So it says that you've had your Scoutmaster Conference. It means that the scout is meeting with the Scoutmaster or the Scoutmaster's designee. So that could be Assistant Scoutmaster or even an older scout, depending on what your troop has decided is how they're going to do it. And they are talking about they go over every requirement for the rank. They're going through making sure that everything is completed and checked off. And then they're talking about, okay, what's your next step? What are your plans? What rank are you going for next? Just checking in with them. But the big thing about a Scoutmaster Conference is that is where the rank requirement check needs to happen. That is where the bulk of it, that's the Scoutmaster can test. The Scoutmaster can have them tie the knots or show that they know the whatever the rank requirements are for first aid, whatever. That is where the testing happens, is with the Scoutmaster at the Scoutmaster Conference.
Gotcha. So if something slipped through the cracks, that would be the time to catch it.
That is where you catch it. That is where you catch it. Yes.
Very good. Shout out real quick to Todd, who is a assistant Scoutmaster. Todd, would love to hear your thoughts on, I'm sure you've got some experience with boards of review in your troop. Okay, so let's say the Scoutmaster Conference is done and completed, and we are ready to move on to a board of review. What's the process of setting that up? In the first place, how does that work?
So the committee is who sets that up. So it might be your advancement chair, whose responsibility is, it just depends on the troop how that's going to happen. But the committee sets up the board of review. You cannot require your scout to set up the board of review. You cannot require your scout to ask for the board of review. If a scout has completed their Scoutmaster Conference, then it is the adults who should make sure that that board of review happens fairly quickly. Scouts shouldn't be made to wait like months for their board of review, and they shouldn't be made to have to ask for it to have it happen. It's the adults' responsibility to make sure that the board of review is set up and happens in a timely fashion.
Got it. Yeah. So again, the board of review is not a retest. Any sort of retesting should happen during the Scoutmaster Conference.
Yes.
Days or maybe a few weeks or so before that. The youth does not set up the board of review themselves. Right. Or doesn't have to set up the board of review themselves. Maybe is the accurate way to say that.
Yes.
The adults do that. And every effort should be made ahead of time to make sure that the youth is ready. We're trying to set them up for success, I think, is the idea.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found, Angelique, as I was doing some research for the show, is I found an old blog post that our good friend Brian Wendell did. And the headline was, "A board of review is not a job interview." I wonder if you put that in your notes as well. It's not supposed to be an interview. What does that mean?
Yeah, so a board of review should be a relaxed atmosphere. It should be a pleasant atmosphere. They shouldn't walk into the room and be terrified. You shouldn't be sitting there stern and trying to grill the scout. And this goes hand in hand with testing too. So it's supposed to be a pleasant atmosphere that the scout is coming into. And it's not a job interview. So you're not grilling them on everything, and it's not testing them, retesting them on knots. It's supposed to be more of a check-in time. It's supposed to be more, the word would be qualitative. So you're asking them how things are going. You can ask things like, what did you learn from these merit badges that you've completed? And who was your merit badge counselor? Or what did you learn from the experience? Or what was really hard for you in the experience? And by that, you're able to tell that they've completed it or not. And remember, your Scoutmaster conference should have figured out whether they completed or not. If you get to a board of review and the scout and is failing, hasn't completed what they are supposed to for that rank, then you've done your job as an adult wrong, because you should catch it before it gets to the board of review. So again, board of review, relax, talking about the scout's experience with the troop, with what they've learned so far. It's a great time to check in. It's a very pleasant, guiding experience for the scout, not something that should be stressful or scary.
One of the things that you said before we started, Angelique, is that though it's not an interview, it can prepare scouts for that type of thing down the road, because hopefully our young men and women are going to be involved in interviews in the future.
Yes.
So it is a good way to sort of be prepared for that. One of the things that really struck me about my son's Scouts BSA experience is how much experience he got talking to adults, right? Mm-hmm. And asking adults questions, looking them in the eye, being respectful, all that stuff like that. Quite frankly, when I was a kid, Angelique, I wasn't that great at, right? So that's one of the great skills. But I would love to, if you don't mind, to dig into that a little bit more in terms of not making the review intimidating. Can we talk about that a little bit? Like, as an adult, so I was invited as an adult leader to participate in some boards review. Some kids are nervous, right? They're just naturally nervous, especially in a room with 3, 4, 5 adults maybe, and they're sitting at the table and they're surrounded by these adults with their uniforms. Maybe we could talk real quick about how do we make sure that they're comfortable and not intimidated?
Absolutely. So, I see in the comments someone posted adult association, and that was exactly what I wanted to talk about, because adult association is one of the methods of scouting. It is how we deliver the program. So a board of review is an opportunity for scouts to practice some of those social skills with adults. They're practicing learning how to speak with adults. So it's our job to guide them in the conversation. We're not there to judge them or to grade them on how well they talk to adults. We're there to give them a comfortable opportunity to get comfortable speaking with adults. So we can do that by, warmly greeting the scout. If they walk into a room and you've got 3 to 6 adults sitting at a table and everyone is in their uniform and very sternly looking at the scout, that's intimidating. It should be a, hey, scout, how are you doing? What are you here today? Come talk to us and tell us how things are going. Very comfortable time, and that's important.
Yeah, very, very good. I actually was not familiar with that phrase, adult association, but
it's one of 8 methods of scouting.
Exactly what you were talking about, Despo. That's great. Yes. Joe says he hates it when people invent trick questions to ask. It's not a Miss America pageant. Mike asked a question. We kind of touched on this, but maybe we could address Mike's question. What would be reasons for a scout to not successfully pass a board of review?
This is tricky. So a scout, if you are doing your job correctly, should almost never fail a board of review. It should be like, in your 10 years of experience, it's maybe happened once, right? So scouts can request a board of review at any time, and it is up to the adults to make sure that that scout has completed all the requirements before the board of review. But the scout can insist to have a board of review, even if they are not prepared. And even if your Scoutmaster has guided them and said, hey, scout, you have not completed this, and we really need to get this completed. And the scout is just bent on having that board of review no matter what. That would be a moment where the board would be able to say, this hasn't been completed. but it would be a learning opportunity for the scout. And it is so rare that that happens. So rare. It should be so rare. And unfortunately, I hear about it a lot that kids get failed. But if you're doing your job right as an adult, it should almost never happen, because things like uniforms and scout book, having your scout book with you, handbook with you, or not having your uniform are not allowed. Those are not reasons that you can fail a scout for a board of review. Only not completing the requirements as written is a reason. So.
Well, and I love the way that you phrase it, Angelique. If something goes wrong, let's just say, and the scout insists on a board of review when they're not ready, well, that's a learning experience. You can kind of turn that into a learning experience from the scout. This is why we do it this way. This is why we need to be patient, or whatever it might be. Yeah.
And then here's an important thing, though, that happens if you as a board, it should be very, very serious as you as a board. If you are thinking that a scout is going to fail, then you need to have that conversation before you do the board of review, because once you have that board of review and you have to fail that scout, then you need to provide in writing a letter to the scout and to the advancement chair for the council about why they failed, and give them the information from the Guide to Advancement on what they can do to challenge the decision that they have not passed their board of review. So it becomes something where council is supposed to be involved immediately if you decide that you are failing a scout or not passing a scout from their board of review. It's not something we do lightly. It's very much not something we do lightly.
Angelique, you kind of touched on this real quick also, about the kinds of questions that you might ask. You can ask about what skills were learned, who was your merit badge counselor, what did you gain from the experience. Todd mentions you can ask how they like the troop, what kind of how they like the camp house. Those seem like great questions. Any other ideas like that, or the kind of questions that you can ask during a board, or should ask during a board of review?
Yeah, Todd's question was great, because this is the time for the committee to kind of audit what experience the scouts are having in their troop. And this might be the time where you're getting feedback that the scouts perhaps would like to be in charge of their own meetings more, or perhaps the scouts are really tired of a certain type of camp out and are feeling pushed to do something. This is how you're reviewing how the Scoutmaster Corps is doing. This is how you're reviewing how the youth leadership is doing. You're checking in and feeling the temperature of your troop. This is also where you might get a red flag that the scouts are bored. So that means they might need some new ideas for things to do. And these are all good things that you can take back to your committee, back to your Scoutmaster Corps, and they can talk to each other and think about how they can improve the experience for the kids.
So speaking of learning experiences, maybe the adults and the committee members are there learn something about the troop as well. They might bring up something they don't like about campouts, and the adults talk about it and say, hey, kid's got a good point.
Yes.
Scouts BSA Troop 1887 says, great topic, super helpful. Thank you for watching. We appreciate that. Timothy sort of says / asks, you can also pause the board and continue after the scout has remedied the situation. Is that correct?
So that actually is correct. If you
thank you, Timothy. Good job, buddy.
Yeah, I'm thinking Timothy knows his stuff about it.
Yeah.
But that is something that can happen where perhaps the scout has admitted, I didn't do that 5-mile hike. Like I said, that's even though it's marked off, I know it's marked off, but I didn't do it. That might be where you give the opportunity to the scout. And again, it's in the scout's best interest to say, yeah, maybe I should go do that. Can we put this on pause and then I'll come back? So you would adjourn the board of review. The scout would go complete the requirement, and then you'd have the same people back to complete the board of review. So they're not failing it. The scout's choosing to adjourn it, complete, and then come back.
Very cool. I did not know that either. Thank you very much, Timothy. Very good. Shout out to Dwight, who's watching from Puerto Rico. Thank you for watching. Mark says, I like to do a start, stop, continue set of questions. I'm not familiar with that. Angelique, do you know what that means?
Stop, continue. Yeah, absolutely. That's, what do I want to start doing? What do I want to stop doing? And what would I like to continue doing with the scout? So perhaps you're talking to the scout and they say, I would like to start trying more leadership positions, or I would like to stop being quartermaster. Those are good conversation starters to have with the scout. So it's good questions, Mark.
Awesome. Very good, Mark. Appreciate that. Okay, so speaking of the adults, a board review obviously consists of one youth and a handful of adults. Who are those adults sitting on with them, maybe not on the opposite side of the table, wherever they are? Who makes up that group of people?
Okay, so a board of review is made up of 3 to 6 adults. Generally, it is adult committee members from the troop. Sometimes you might not have enough to have a board of review, so you might borrow other registered Scout adults from other units. In extreme circumstances, perhaps when you have no other option, you may invite, and I am hesitant to even say this on camera, but you may invite parents who know the program really well to come fill out your board. But that should be the last resort. You should be using registered Scout adults who know the program really well. So generally committee members. Now here's the thing. Scoutmasters should never, ever be on your board of review. Scoutmasters have their own role. This is a committee role, so there's a balance between it. Now, if you need another person and you borrow a Scoutmaster from a different unit to come sit on your board of review, that's a different story. But the Scoutmaster of that youth should never be on the board of review. Parents or relatives or legal guardians should also never be on that Scouts board of review.
Yeah, it totally makes sense why you wouldn't want a parent on there. They might be a little bit biased, but the Scoutmaster thing might be counterintuitive to some folks who aren't super familiar with the program. Hey, the Scoutmaster is the person in charge. It seems like they should be the one running the board's review. Can you explain a little bit about why the board of review is not the Scoutmaster's domain, right?
I would be happy to, because unfortunately I hear a lot of Scoutmasters who say they sit on boards of review. I just want to go, oh my goodness. So Scoutmasters have their own role. Their role is the Scoutmaster conference that happens before. That's the board of review. Or at the Scoutmaster conference. That's their role. The board of review happens with the committee, because this is a chance for the committee to see how the program is operating with the Scoutmaster. This is an opportunity for the Scouts to give feedback on the Scoutmaster. It's an opportunity for the Scouts to have adult associations with other adults besides their Scoutmaster. So it's a little checks and balances system that's really important that we have it that way. An assistant Scoutmaster cannot sit on a board of review either. It is the Scoutmaster Corps and the committee. They're 2 separate bodies, and they each have different roles, and we have to be really careful about maintaining those roles. The people who sign off on the books should not also be the people who are doing the boards of review.
You know what? I just had this great idea, Angelique. It's almost like I would compare it to if a young person is going into a job interview, they might talk to another adult about being prepared for that interview, how, what kind of questions they're going to get. But that adult doesn't go in the interview with them. Once they go on the interview, that's their sort of chance to do it, put their training into practice. Same kind of thing here. The Scoutmaster conference is the time for the Scoutmaster.
A little bit.
Check everything. A
little bit. So a Scoutmaster, if the Scout really feels uncomfortable, the Scoutmaster may sit and observe. I don't super recommend it, because this is the time for the Scout to speak candidly about the program. But a Scoutmaster can sit and observe. They cannot contribute, but they may observe the board of review. But again, that's not something that we really want to encourage. That's just if the Scout really needs a little bit of backup there. The other thing that you're probably going to ask me about is parents.
Well, before you address that, you've put a really good note in an email that you sent me just a little while ago about parents not being there because it might affect how the kids act, which makes sense to me. Maybe, talk about that a little bit, Angela.
Yeah. So, parents can sometimes get uneasy. Boards of review sound really serious. They sound really important. And they get real nervous for their kid. Like my child, I should be there to support my child, or I want to be there to make sure my kid is treated fairly. Remember that boards of review, we've already done as adults all the work to make sure that our Scout is going to pass and going to do well. And remember that a board of review is supposed to be a very pleasant experience for the youth. Parents are discouraged from coming to a board of review or coming into the board of review, because it can affect how the youth answer the questions and affect what they say and if they're speaking candidly or not. This is also an opportunity for the youth to practice some bravery and practice some adult association. So it's discouraged that you have parents observing a board of review. That being said, all parts of the BSA are open to parent observation, parent or legal guardian observation. So if a Scout parent is really insistent, they can be a fly on the wall observer in the room. But again, every effort should be to discourage a parent from doing that. And usually what I have found, because I've been a committee chair in one of my troops for many, many years, is once we explain that we've set the kids up for success, we've made sure they're going to pass ahead of time, and that we are doing everything to help this be a comfortable and enjoyable experience for them. And we're talking about, like, what are their goals in scouting and how are things going in scouting, and not quizzing them on anything. Most parents are very comfortable saying, okay, I didn't understand what was happening, and I'd be happy to let them have this experience.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Lauren asks a good question. How do we get the adults talking about the board members to not ask about 10 essentials and other off-subject things? My advice, Lauren, send them a link to this video.
Yeah.
By the way, this video will stay here on this Facebook page or YouTube page, wherever you're watching it. You can always share this with your friends. I think we kind of addressed that,
Yeah.
Angelique, earlier about, it's not a quiz, it's not a test. It is more a comfortable back and forth discussion about what they've learned, what they've accomplished, things like that.
Yes.
Berna asks, do members of the, this is a good question, do members of the board have to be registered members of the BSA?
So again, we did touch on that a little earlier about that's really a last resort to have someone who is unregistered but still understands the program. There always have to be, just to make it very, very clear, there always have to be 2 registered adult volunteers at all times. And if you have a female scout, one of them needs to be female at all times. To make up that 3 to 6 people, if you don't have enough people at your disposal, maybe you live very rurally, then yes, you can have a non-registered adult who's very familiar with the program, but that is the exception, not the rule. That is should happen very rarely.
Gotcha. Mark says he likes to take an opportunity to ask questions about life goals and things like that, especially during the border reviews for Life and Eagle. By the way, maybe now's a good time to note that the Eagle Scout border review might be slightly different than kind of what we're talking about here. We're not going to get into that in too much, maybe a future show, Angelique, but definitely the Life Scout border review, exactly what we've talked about here. Earl says we have borrowed amazing leaders from other units to help us with boards of review, especially when at camp. He's a retired Scoutmaster who enjoys participating in being on the troop committee and participating in boards of review. That sounds great, Earl. Appreciate that very, very much. Real quick, Angelique, as we have about 6 minutes left. So after the board review is done, you've got you probably, I think, well, what happens when the board review is done? Once everybody feels like the discussion is complete and everything has been addressed appropriately, what's the next step?
Okay, so you ask the scout to leave the room out of earshot, and then the board makes their decision. And we talked about what would happen in the very rare occasion that a scout would not be passing their board of review. But everyone has to be in agreement on the board. And then we invite the scout back into the room. We say, congratulations, you are whatever your next rank is. We shake their hands, we congratulate them and tell them they did a good job. And then we make sure that the advancement chair has the information, and we sign off on the paper that they've completed the rank, and it goes into the system. And that date becomes the date that they make the rank for. It's not at the court of honor. It's the date that they completed the board of review is their rank.
And then once the board unanimously makes that decision, I presume you bring the scout back in. Yes. Congratulations are in order. A little party ensues.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to address, Charlie has a good question here about, and we mentioned before about some kids are shy. Charlie, I think, is asking if it's a little more a certain level of social anxiety. Right. We've kind of talked about trying to make a board of review relaxed You're trying not to intimidate the poor thing. But what do you think, Angelique, about a child who really does have some anxiety about being in a room like that in a situation?
Absolutely. So if your Scout has special needs, or your Scout has a disability, and diagnosed anxiety, that's a disability, right? So is autism. So are all kinds of different things. If your Scout has a special needs and needs an accommodation, that is something that you need to contact your council's advancement chair and your council's special needs chair, and you work with them to figure out what accommodations need to be made for your Scout. And that's something that you can have the conversation with them and the Scoutmaster or the committee chair of the unit to make sure that that Scout is being accommodated appropriately. So that might look like something like a parent who's attending with. That might look like a Scout who's prepared some things written ahead of time or on a adaptive speech technology. Those are all different things, but every kid is so different in what they need that is why it has to be a conversation that happens ahead of time. And we include people from the council, from the advancement committee, and from the special needs committee, so that you can make sure that there's not going to be any problems when we get to the advancement.
Ethan asks an interesting question. What if not all of the adults in the room are in agreement after a board of review? Again, I'm just thinking all this stuff should have been tackled in advance, but I'm sure that does happen. What are your thoughts, Angelique?
So again, this has got to happen ahead of time. We have to make sure that we know that those kids are going to fly through with flying colors on that board of review ahead of time. If you get to a board of review and you're not sure, then once again, you have failed as an adult to do your homework ahead of time to make sure that that Scout is going to be successful. So this is not the place to test them. This is not the place to go through and their book and say, okay, recite this and tell me this. That happens with the Scoutmaster. The Scoutmasters are the ones who need to be absolutely certain that they've completed the requirements as written. And then the board of review, if any people on the board of review have concerns ahead of time, those have to be discussed ahead of time, before the board of review. If the kid gets to the board of review and there's any question whatsoever, you have not done your job as an adult. That's a big, big deal that we need to make sure we understand.
Kieran's question is kind of related to boards of review, but I kind of think this is one of those things that, again, should have been addressed earlier. Kieran asks about talking about requirements that are signed off in the book, if it's missing some sort of data like the date, for example. And I have seen that before where a kid will say, I don't remember when I did the 5-mile hike, but I know I did it. What are your thoughts on something like that? I mean, is that something that should already have been addressed by the time you get to a board of review?
Before it needs to be done beforehand. It goes through lots of checks and balances. You've got Scoutmasters and assistant Scoutmasters. You've got advancement chairs who are verifying the books before the board of review, or verifying the Scout book beforehand. You want to do your homework, because remember, in scouting, we're setting kids up to succeed. We're not setting them up to fail. We're setting them up to succeed. We're doing everything we can to check and make sure that they're going to have a positive experience. Mistakes happen. Yes, that happens, but it's our job to set them up ahead of time so that they're going to have a positive experience with a board of review.
You addressed this earlier, Angelique, but just to be clear, a Scout cannot fail a board of review because they forgot their handbook, or because they're not wearing the right uniform, or something like that. That is not a valid reason. Mm-hmm. All About Scouts does ask a question when it comes to special needs.
Yes.
And I know, Angelique, I don't know if we're the right people to answer this or not, but what do you think? Can we define special needs? I mean, that probably means different things to different people. But when it comes to accommodations and things like that, how do we know if a kid has anxiety or if he's just a little bit nervous, right?
So those are great questions that each family individually needs to have with their physicians and their caregivers. And if there's any concern and that accommodations need to be made, then those notes from the doctor or from the caregiver need to go to the council's special needs committee or the council's advancements chair, or both. It's a great conversation for everybody to have together to figure out what is needed for this particular Scout. Again, I can't tell you what is and isn't, because every kid is so different. So that's a conversation that needs to be had for each particular Scout, and you want to involve all the affected parties to make sure that we're every kid should have the opportunity to Scout. Every kid belongs in Scouting, and so we have to make sure that the program, we are making adaptations to the program for them and not making them fit into the program. It's really important.
And that sounds like another thing that should be handled in advance before you actually get to the
Again,
board of review, right? That should be that discussion should happen much earlier in the board of review. Angelique, this has been great. I hope we got to most of your answers there. Before we let you go, though, Angelique, any final thoughts on the board of review? Anything we haven't addressed that you want to make sure people know about?
I do. The one big thing is if there are any concerns about boards of review, those go to your district, a district advancement chair, and then your council advancement chair. Those are your first line. If you have a concern about something that's happening in your unit and that you can't resolve in the unit, then go to your district advancement chair, and then go to your council advancement chair, and go to you've got the guide to advancement that lays it all out for you there. So go to the guide to advancement, ask your council resources on advancement. If they can't answer the question, and they probably can, they have resources that are beyond the council that they can consult and find out your answer. It shouldn't be something that you're fighting your committee about, or you're fighting your Scoutmaster about, or you're making decisions on behalf of the organization. Just go to your resources, talk to your commissioners, talk to your councils. They can help you.
A great reminder that the units, you guys are not in this alone. There are resources and people out there to help. I want to close with a good comment from Mark. We have to make sure that all of the adults on the board know what a board of review is about. That's a great point. Couldn't have said it better. We've kind of said that, but Mark, I think, said it better than you and I both did, Angelique. Yeah. And I've been asked, I was asked to serve. I served on a couple of board reviews. I didn't know what I was doing. So I asked, and everybody explained to me exactly what you said, Angelique. I would imagine there's a lot of adults out there eager to volunteer, eager to help out, and they hear board of review. And they go, oh, I'm gonna give them a test. I'm gonna ask all these questions. Just make sure we're clear everywhere.
Send them this video.
Send them this video. Exactly right. Exactly right. This has been a great discussion, Angelique. Appreciate your time so much today, as always. And again, as a reminder, if you missed part of the discussion, if you want to go back, you can always go back and watch again. Next month, we already know what we're going to talk about next month. We're going to talk about the BSA swim test next month as a part of kind of an organization-wide initiative to raise awareness of aquatic safety. It'll already be February next month, and that's a time when a lot of units are doing swim tests to get ready, believe it or not, for summer. It's almost here, summer camp. Before you know it, we'll be talking about summer camp. In the meantime, though, everybody stay warm. Thanks again, Angelique. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Bye.